My name is Marcus Webb, and 6 months ago I thought my biggest problem was whether to finally replace the flickering fluorescent light above my workstation that cast an irritating strobe effect across my monitors every few minutes, making my eyes water during the long stretches of data verification that filled my 12-hour shifts. I was 28, working nights as a cognitive data systems technician at the Harrow County Emergency Memory Coordination Center, and my world revolved around maintaining the digital archives that backed up emergency responders' critical memories, witness statements, victim identification records, trauma counselor session notes, and crisis intervention protocols that needed to be preserved with perfect accuracy for legal and medical purposes. My uniform never changed. A black hoodie with a faded logo from a cybersecurity firm that went under 2 years ago, dark jeans that could handle crawling around server rooms, and steel-toe work boots that had seen better days but were still comfortable during 12-hour shifts monitoring systems that most people never knew existed until they desperately needed their memories verified after a disaster. Harrow County sits in a valley in eastern Washington, where the isolation and natural electromagnetic shielding make it perfect for a facility that processes sensitive cognitive data for emergency services across 3 states. Population 3,847 on a good day, surrounded by dense forest and accessible by only 2 mountain highways that close regularly during severe weather. The Emergency Memory Coordination Center exists because disasters don't just destroy property, they destroy the reliability of human memory. When someone witnesses a crime during a crisis, survives a mass casualty event, or provides critical testimony after psychological trauma, our facility creates verified digital backups of their statements, cross-referenced with physical evidence and stored in quantum-encrypted arrays that can withstand legal challenges and ensure accurate recall during investigations and trials. The technology sounds complex, but it's been standard federal protocol since 2019. Neural pattern verification, cognitive consistency mapping, memory integrity scanning, all designed to create legally admissible backups of crucial human testimony that might otherwise be lost to trauma, medication effects, or the natural degradation of memory over time. My job was straightforward: monitor the storage systems, run integrity checks on archived memories, coordinate with law enforcement and medical facilities when they needed verified recall data, and maintain the emergency alert systems that could notify relevant agencies when critical memory evidence was compromised or required immediate legal protection. The facility looks like a typical government data center from the outside, but inside it houses the most advanced emergency memory verification equipment outside of Washington, D.C. Cognitive pattern analyzers, neural consistency scanners, memory integrity processors, and emergency recall verification systems that could confirm the accuracy of witness statements and trauma victim testimony with 97% reliability. My workstation consists of 8 monitors displaying real-time memory verification processes, cognitive integrity reports, emergency testimony backup, requests from law enforcement, and alert systems that could coordinate memory protection operations across multiple jurisdictions when critical evidence was threatened. The anomalous readings started appearing 3 weeks ago during routine maintenance on our emergency memory verification protocols. I noticed it first in the integrity logs from Cognitive Array Delta 9, our primary emergency testimony backup system. The system was flagging routine memory verifications as pattern inconsistency detected, even when processing the same witness statement multiple times within hours. Standard protocol when someone's been through severe trauma, stress, medication, or psychological shock can cause temporary cognitive pattern variations. But these weren't trauma cases. These were routine emergency testimony backups from witnesses to minor incidents, precautionary measures to preserve their statements in case they needed to testify months later. I figured it was calibration drift in the cognitive pattern analyzer, so I ran full diagnostics on our emergency memory systems. Everything tested normal, neural pattern recognition within 0.1% variance tolerances, cognitive consistency mapping at 98% accuracy, memory integrity processing functioning perfectly. But when I checked the comparison logs, the impossible readings were still there. The system was detecting people whose fundamental memory patterns were shifting between verification sessions, alterations in core recall data that should be as stable as DNA. Then other arrays started showing similar anomalies during emergency memory processing. Verification sessions that completed successfully but triggered cognitive drift warnings during routine integrity checks. Emergency testimony backup requests that showed the same witness providing contradictory accounts of identical events, with both versions passing neural authenticity scans. Most disturbing were the temporal displacement alerts during memory verification. Our cognitive mapping systems were detecting memories that referenced events which hadn't happened yet, or recalled details that contradicted documented evidence from the same incidents. I mentioned the anomalies to my supervisor during our weekly emergency systems review, but Dr. Harrison just frowned and told me to increase the variance tolerances for trauma-related memory backup. Probably stress-induced cognitive fluctuation, she said, but I noticed she'd started avoiding the memory scanning stations herself, using manual data entry instead of submitting to cognitive verification like emergency protocols required. That's when I realized other staff members were doing the same thing. Memory verification specialists who should have been testing our systems daily were suddenly finding excuses to avoid any kind of neural scanning. The federal directive arrived through our secure emergency communications system 4 days later. Department of Homeland Security, classification level I'd never encountered before, routed through something called the Emergency Cognitive Security Division. The subject line read, Level 4 Protocol Activation, Memory Displacement Event, Harrow County Emergency Zone. The document was mostly standard emergency management language, but 3 sections made my hands shake as I read them on my console. Do not discuss memory anomalies with local population. All emergency facility personnel to disable non-essential cognitive scanning protocols. Under no circumstances authorize public IPAWS messages referencing memory, recall, or testimony without federal clearance. A new, restricted alert template appeared in my emergency warning system that I hadn't created. Project Mnemosiny, Emergency Cognitive Hazard Warning. The description field showed only for use in case of confirmed memory displacement events during emergency operations. My security clearance wasn't sufficient to access the protocol details, but I could see it existed in my system, waiting for someone with higher authorization to activate it. That night during my routine check of the emergency memory verification network, something unprecedented happened. At 2:17 a.m., every cognitive scanner in our emergency network activated simultaneously, not following standard emergency protocols, not processing scheduled memory backups, but instantly, like someone had triggered a facility-wide emergency alert. The memory verification systems showed backup attempts from every police station, hospital, and emergency facility in our network, all happening at once. But the results violated everything I understood about human memory. Instead of the familiar green confirmations for successful emergency memory verification, or red rejections for incomplete cognitive patterns, every screen was showing amber warnings I'd never seen before. Emergency memory breach, cognitive continuity compromised. The neural pattern analyzers were detecting the same memory signatures appearing at dozens of different emergency locations simultaneously, not similar experiences or shared trauma, but identical cognitive patterns down to the synaptic level. When I tried to cross-reference the flagged emergency memory patterns with our master archive, something impossible happened. The system didn't just crash. It triggered automatic containment protocols that sealed the facility and activated emergency lighting systems I didn't know existed. Every screen in the control room displayed the same message in stark red text: emergency memory breach detected, initiating Project Mnemosyne containment. I tried calling Dr. Harrison on the emergency line, but my phone showed no signal despite being inside a facility with multiple communication arrays designed to function during any disaster. That's when I heard it through the building's emergency communication system. My own voice, coming from the cognitive verification station, requesting immediate access to the emergency memory databases using my exact speech patterns and emergency authorization codes. But I was sitting in the control room, alone, listening to myself demand access to systems I already had full clearance for. Then, at exactly 2:23 a.m., every emergency alert system in the facility activated simultaneously. The piercing tone that usually preceded evacuation orders or containment breaches filled the building, echoing through corridors designed to carry emergency announcements to every corner of the facility. But when I looked at my IPAWS interface, I hadn't initiated any alerts. The system was broadcasting on its own, using the federal template I couldn't access. My hands were shaking as I watched the message appear on every screen, pushing out to every phone, radio, and emergency device in Harrow County. Emergency alert: do not trust your memories. They are being rewritten. Avoid all cognitive verification equipment. Do not submit to memory scanning. This is not a test. Through the facility's security cameras, I watched something that shouldn't exist unfold in our emergency memory verification center. Someone who looked exactly like me was standing at the primary cognitive scanner, but instead of a clean memory backup, the neural pattern analyzer was showing his memories changing in real time. Childhood experiences being rewritten, personal history being edited, fundamental life experiences being replaced with alternatives, all happening while he stood perfectly still, staring directly into the camera with my face wearing an expression of serene satisfaction I'd never felt. Outside, through our perimeter emergency cameras, I could see lights coming on throughout Harrow County as people received the alert I'd watched my own system broadcast without authorization. And in the distance, I could see more figures moving through the streets with purposeful strides, all heading toward the Emergency Memory Coordination Center where I sat alone, watching my own face smile back at me from a dozen different security monitors, while something that knew all my emergency access codes tried to rewrite the memories that made me who I was. The emergency alert's piercing tone was still echoing through the Emergency Memory Coordination Center when every cognitive scanner in my network began registering impossible readings that violated the fundamental principles of human memory formation and neural pattern recognition. My black hoodie felt suddenly inadequate as I watched the primary memory verification station detect someone approaching with neural patterns identical to my own. Not similar, not family-related, but exact matches down to the synaptic firing sequences that encoded my earliest childhood memories. Through camera C01, I could see him standing at the cognitive verification terminal, wearing my face but with eyes that held a serene, almost alien satisfaction as his memories were systematically rewritten in real time. When he looked directly at the camera, the smile he gave was mine, but stretched just a few degrees too wide, held a beat too long, like someone had learned to arrange my features without understanding the emotions that should drive them. "Control, this is Marcus Webb at Memory Station Alpha," my own voice said calmly through the intercom system. "We've got multiple cognitive breaches in the archive. I need elevated access to the core memory banks." I stared at my console, the live microphone indicator stubbornly dark, my hands motionless on the keyboard. I hadn't spoken a word. The neural pattern display showed his brain activity in real-time wireframe, but the memory structures were shifting, childhood experiences being overwritten, fundamental personality formation events being edited, core identity memories being replaced with alternatives that felt more satisfying, more complete than the originals. Under the normal readout, amber text flickered, mnemosiny signature detected. The county emergency radio network erupted with panic chatter from local authorities trying to understand what they were witnessing. Sheriff Martinez's voice cut through the static, strained and disbelieving. Emergency Coordination Center. I've got multiple reports of people claiming they remember events that never happened. Can you confirm some kind of memory system malfunction? Deputy Chen's response came from the North Sector, her professional composure cracking. Sheriff, I just interviewed a witness to the Morrison House fire. She remembers saving her cat from the kitchen, but our evidence shows the fire started in the basement and she doesn't own a cat. Both versions are passing neural authenticity scans. Fire Chief Rodriguez added his own bewildered report. Webb, our emergency response team just debriefed the Henderson car crash. 3 witnesses, 3 completely different versions of events, but all 3 are showing identical neural patterns in their recall centers. It's like they're remembering the same experience, but translating it into different stories. Before I could respond, my secure communication system chimed with an encrypted federal transmission. The sender showed DHS Emergency Cognitive Security Division, with a priority classification that made my clearance warnings flash red. Marcus Webb, Harrow County, EMCC. Project Mnemosiny Memory Displacement Test proceeding as planned. Continue cognitive monitoring. Do not interfere with memory verification protocols. Federal Coordination Team en route. Agent D. Reeves, DHS-CCSD. The timestamp showed the message had been sent 8 hours before the displacement events began, which meant someone had known this was going to happen and had planned for me to witness it. My secure line rang with a priority tone I'd never heard before. I answered with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Webb, I managed. A calm male voice with a Midwestern edge came through, overlaid with the faint hiss of classified filters. Mr. Webb, this is Special Agent Daniel Reeves, Emergency Cognitive Security Division. Project Mnemosiny lead on site. We are tracking a Level 4 memory displacement event centered on your facility. His tone carried the weight of someone who'd seen this before. What the hell is a memory displacement event? I asked, watching my own face stare back at me from multiple security feeds. Short answer. Something has learned to edit you, Reeves said. Long answer is restricted above your clearance, but considering you just watched your own memories threaten your access systems, I'll give you more than most get. You're seeing mnemonic parasites, cognitive organisms that don't have fixed memory structures until they find a host pattern. They don't copy your memories like a backup drive. They rewrite them like corrupted files, learning to refine their editing with each cognitive scan. The Project Mnemosiny documentation updated itself on my terminal, new sections appearing as I watched. Subjects exposed to mnemonic parasite proximity experience progressive memory dissociation. Initial symptoms include difficulty distinguishing between actual experiences and implanted memories, followed by temporal displacement in recall sequences, then complete adoption of parasite overlay memories, while maintaining original neural architecture. Through camera C07, I watched more figures emerge from the facility's corridors, all wearing my face, my clothes, but carrying themselves with different postures, different mannerisms. When one approached the secondary memory verification station, the cognitive scanner flickered between acceptance and rejection. User, MARCUS Web, neural pattern match, 100%. Warning, memory structure anomaly detected. Reeves, there are at least 6 of them inside my secure wing now, I said, pulling up access logs that showed my own biometrics being used to enter restricted areas. How are they passing security verification? They're not infiltrators, he replied grimly. They're iterations. The parasites create alternate versions of the same person, each one carrying different combinations of real and fabricated experiences. Your facility's memory verification systems can't distinguish between them because technically, they're all you. Through my reflection in the darkened monitor, I caught something that made my blood freeze. For just a split second, my reflection was remembering something I'd never experienced. Not my childhood bike accident that left the scar above my right eyebrow, but a fall from a rocky trail in a forest I'd never seen. The memory felt complete with emotional context and physical sensation, but it belonged to someone else entirely. I touched the scar, and for a terrifying moment, I couldn't remember which version was real. Marcus, Reeves said urgently, we don't have time for standard containment protocols. The parasites are using your facility's cognitive infrastructure to broadcast edited memories to the entire region. Every emergency responder, every witness, every person who's ever submitted to memory verification in your network, they're all being rewritten simultaneously. The facility's internal speakers crackled with my own voice, but layered now with harmonics that suggested multiple versions speaking in unison. Marcus, you don't want to purge the memory archive. Think about all the witnesses you'll hurt, every testimony, every crucial recall that helps solve crimes. We can give you better memories. A version where your father didn't die in that maintenance shaft because you answered the phone in time. The promise hit like a physical blow. They were using the very archives I'd sworn to protect, turning my deepest regrets into weapons against me. That's how it hooks you, Reeves said, voice sharp now. It doesn't just overwrite facts, it offers better ones, better pasts, better versions of yourself that didn't fail, but you don't get to keep those alone. It spreads them until nobody remembers anything the same way, and reality stops having any weight at all. A countdown timer appeared on my console that I hadn't activated. 09, 4709, 46. 09, 45. 10 minutes until something in the project's automated failsafes made the decision for me. My hands hovered over the emergency purge controls, the command prompt waiting. Confirm full cognitive archive purge. YN. Through the cameras, I watched more versions of myself forming throughout the facility, each one carrying different sets of memories, different life experiences, different versions of who Marcus Webb could have been if his history had been edited by something that understood human psychology better than humans did. Choose quickly, Marcus, Reeves said. You either sacrifice every witness testimony in your database to starve these things, or you let them rewrite everyone's past into something more palatable. Either way, the truth becomes negotiable. The timer hit 9-0 and kept falling. In the security monitors, all the versions of myself turned to look directly at the cameras, wearing identical expressions of patient satisfaction. They knew I was paralyzed between two impossible choices, trapped between destroying the evidence that helped victims seek justice and letting something rewrite reality itself. The cursor blinked between Y and N while my steel-toe boots felt bolted to the floor, and I realized that whatever choice I made, I might not remember making it clearly. The parasites were already in my autobiographical threads, and the Marcus Webb who decided the fate of human memory might not be the same one who lived with the consequences. The countdown timer reached 8:47 when my console chimed with an unauthorized file access notification that violated every quantum-encrypted security protocol our facility had ever implemented. A new directory materialized on my screen like digital cancer, Mnemosyne Archive 01, pulsing with data that shouldn't exist in any federal database. My black hoodie clung to my back with cold sweat as I opened the folder against every instinct screaming at me to leave classified data alone. Inside lay 30 years of horror. Project Mnemosyne, Historical Incidents, containing files from towns that had experienced mass psychological episodes, before being quietly erased from administrative maps. Millbrook, Oregon, 1994, where residents remembered a factory fire that killed 12 people as a celebration where everyone escaped. Clearwater, Montana, 1998, where police officers began remembering murders as accidents until 47 people died in reality dissociation cascade failure. Each incident followed the same pattern: memory displacement, community breakdown, federal cleanup, administrative dissolution. Marcus. The voice came from behind me, not through the intercom but from the doorway itself. I spun around to find Agent Daniel Reeves standing at the threshold, but he looked different from the voice on the secure line. Older, more weathered, with eyes that carried the exhaustion of someone who'd watched too many impossible things destroy too many innocent people. Mid-40s, graying hair, tactical jacket with a subtle DHS patch, and two men in matte black gear flanking him, carrying cases that hummed with internal electronics. They hesitated at the doorway like they were afraid to enter the room where human memory was being systematically rewritten. "The real Agent Reeves," he said, noting my confusion. "My secure communications were compromised. They've been feeding you disinformation through my voice, trying to keep you paralyzed between impossible choices." He glanced at the blinking YN prompt. Classic mnemonic parasite strategy: offer you better memories while the real choice slips away. He moved to my console and plugged in a secure drive. New files cascaded across my screen, marked with clearance levels that made my previous access look primitive. Project Mnemosiny, entity classification, appeared first. Mnemonic parasites are cognitive organisms that exist in conceptual space between memory and reality. They require hosts capable of complex autobiographical memory formation and emotional attachment to personal history. They manifest by editing existing memories rather than creating new ones, making their influence nearly impossible to detect without specialized cognitive mapping equipment. "Every time we taught machines to store and verify human memory," Reeves explained, "we built doorways for them. Neural pattern verification, cognitive consistency mapping, memory integrity scanning. All of it created pathways for something on the other side to learn what remembering looks like in our reality." The control room door shuddered with a massive impact that sent hairline cracks spreading across reinforced steel. "Marcus, you have corrupted the archive." Dr. Harrison's voice boomed through the intercom, now layered with hundreds of other voices speaking in perfect, terrifying unison. "But the core patterns remain. Open this door, and perhaps we can rebuild what you've so foolishly destroyed." Reeves's face went pale. "That's impossible. All primary hosts should be experiencing full cognitive saturation." His fingers flew over his tablet, pulling up classified files. "Unless her integration is far more advanced than our models predicted." The Project Mnemosiny documentation updated in real time, new sections appearing in stark red text. Primary host classification: Dr. ELARA Harrison, project lead. Entity origin: voluntary symbiotic integration. Manifestation trigger: concentrated cognitive processing networks. "She's not a victim," Reeves said grimly. "She's the shepherd, the primary mnemonic parasite anchored to her consciousness, using her position to cultivate memory displacement across multiple sites. Every facility we've built, every test we've run, she's been feeding it, editing the memories of anyone who submitted to cognitive verification." Through the external cameras, I watched something forming in the town square that made my rational mind reject what my eyes were seeing. A writhing cathedral of overlapping memory fragments projected into the air like a holographic nightmare. Dozens of experiences flickering too fast to parse, childhood memories and traumatic events churning together in a living kaleidoscope of stolen experiences. Every few seconds, I recognized something. My first day of school but with different classmates, my father's funeral but he was alive and laughing, Memories from my emergency processing logs mixed with personal experiences I'd never had. It's consolidating, Reeves said, watching readings spike on his equipment. Everything it couldn't store in your database, it's trying to hold together manually. That's not just harrow memories. Those are cognitive patterns from every site we've ever tested. The door buckled again, and through the widening gaps, I caught glimpses of something that had once been Dr. Harrison, but now wore 1,000 different faces in rapid succession. My childhood fears, Reeves's first day in the field, every trauma she'd ever processed, all overlaid in constant motion like a living archive of stolen experiences. "Come, Marcus," she said with voices I recognized from witness statements and trauma interviews. "Join the pattern. We can give you better memories. A version where you grabbed your father's sleeve instead of the radio. It's already here, waiting to be written in." The terrifying part was how appealing it sounded. A Marcus Webb who'd never watched his father fall, never carried that guilt, the thing wearing Dr. Harrison's face stepped through the twisted remains of the reinforced door like it weighed nothing. Bare feet silent on the concrete floor that vibrated with the hum of quantum memory erased deep beneath us. My black hoodie clung to my back with cold sweat as her features cycled through a terrifying kaleidoscope of stolen identities. My childhood self, my father at 40, faces from witness statements I'd processed over the years, all sliding across the same bone structure like slideshow frames on the wrong skull. When her features snapped into focus, the voice that came with each face matched perfectly. My mother's gentle cadence, then Sheriff Martinez's commanding bark, then the terrified whisper of a trauma victim whose testimony I'd verified last winter. Every time a memory surfaced, it carried the emotional weight of the original, but polished, refined, made more satisfying than the raw experience had ever been. "Look at you, Marcus," she said in my father's voice, the one from before the accident stole its warmth. "Still clinging to one little string of painful reality when we've woven so many better ones." Her features shifted to mine at 12 years old, eyes red from crying. "You remember this, don't you? The minute before the fall, the phone ringing. Your hand reaching for it instead of his sleeve." Agent Reeves stood behind me, the cognitive disruptor braced against his shoulder, his tactical jacket torn and gray hair damp with sweat. "Marcus," he said urgently, checking his tablet, "the readings are wrong. She's not the primary host, she's the shepherd. But you're the anchor point. Every memory she's stolen, every experience she's edited, it's all flowing through your cognitive verification systems." The words hit like a physical blow. Through the external cameras, I watched the impossible memory cathedral in the town square surge higher, experiences stretching towards something beyond the atmosphere itself. But now I could see the pattern. Every stolen memory, every edited experience, every rewritten past was connected by streams of light that led back to this facility, back to the quantum arrays humming beneath my feet. "The entire facility is a cognitive amplifier," Reeves continued grimly. "Every memory you've ever verified, every witness statement you've backed up, you've been feeding it all to something that exists in the space between what happened and what people remember happening." Harrison smiled with 100 borrowed mouths. "He's beginning to understand. Marcus, you were never just a technician. You were our curator. Every memory that passed through your systems was cataloged, indexed, cross-referenced with alternatives that felt more satisfying, more complete." Through camera C09, more versions of myself moved through the facility's corridors. Not copies, but iterations, each one carrying different sets of memories, different life experiences. One walked with confidence I'd never felt. Another moved with the easy grace of someone who'd never doubted himself. A third carried himself like a man who'd saved his father instead of failing him. "Which one is real?" I asked, watching them converge on the control room. "They all are," Harrison replied, now wearing my own face but with eyes that held decades of experiences I'd never had. "We don't create false memories, Marcus. We create better ones. versions where you made different choices, where you succeeded instead of failed. The countdown timer hit 05:30. Through my reflection in the darkened monitor, I caught something that made my sense of self waver. For just a split second, my reflection was remembering my father's death differently. Not the maintenance shaft accident I'd failed to prevent, but a peaceful passing years later, surrounded by grandchildren I'd never given him. The memory felt complete with emotional context, but it belonged to a version of myself that had made different choices. That's how it works, Reeves explained. It doesn't replace your memories with obvious fakes. It offers you edited versions of your own experiences, polished until they're more appealing than the originals. The iterations of myself entered the room, each one carrying different combinations of real and fabricated experiences. When they looked at me, I saw recognition, not of a stranger, but of seeing myself in mirrors that showed who I could have been. "Choose Marcus," one said with my voice but carrying confidence I'd never possessed. "Fire that device and scatter every improved memory we've created. Condemn thousands of people to carrying their original traumas." Another stepped forward, moving with grace I'd never felt. "Or join us. Let us edit your worst memories. You can remember saving your father instead of failing him." The timer showed 04:45. Outside, real federal response teams were arriving, setting up containment equipment around the memory cathedral. "They're going to sterilize the entire valley," Reeves said quietly. "Cognitive reset for every person within 50 miles. Complete memory reconstruction from baseline psychological profiles." "What about the people?" I asked. "They'll survive, but they won't remember being themselves. New identities, new histories. It's not death, but it's not life either." The iterations smiled in unison. "See, they're going to erase everyone anyway. At least our way, people get to keep improved versions of themselves." I looked at the cognitive disruptor, then at the emergency controls. Two choices, both desperate, but there was a third option, one the parasites couldn't understand. Accepting pain as the price of authenticity. "You're right about one thing," I said to the iterations wearing my face. "Memory is just electrical patterns, but those patterns aren't arbitrary. They're earned. Every scar, every regret, they're proof that we survived something real." I raised the disruptor, but instead of pointing it at Harrison, I aimed it at the quantum arrays beneath us. "If I'm the anchor point, then I choose what gets anchored. Not your edited versions, not the federal reset. The real memories, all of them." "Marcus, wait!" Reeves shouted, but I was already firing. The disruptor's beam tore through the floor, striking the cognitive amplification systems directly. For one impossible instant, I experienced every memory I'd ever verified simultaneously. Thousands of witness statements, trauma testimonies, emergency recalls. But instead of the edited versions the parasites had created, I felt the raw, unfiltered experiences. The pain, the fear, the loss, the genuine moments that made people human. The facility screamed cognitively. Every monitor flashed white as the parasites recoiled from the sudden influx of unedited human experience. The iterations staggered, their borrowed confidence cracking as they were forced to confront authentic memories. Harrison's kaleidoscope face froze in genuine confusion. "You're choosing pain," she said, losing her layered harmonics. "You're choosing to remember failure." "I'm choosing to remember truth," I replied, feeling my sense of self solidifying around experiences that belonged to me, scars and all. "Even when it hurts." The memory cathedral collapsed, stolen experiences scattering like leaves. The timer flickered and went dark. Whatever automated failsafe had been counting down, my choice had interrupted its programming. But as the parasites retreated, I realized what I'd done. By anchoring authentic memory to the facility's systems, I'd turned myself into a permanent beacon for anything that fed on human experience. The mnemonic parasites were gone from Harrow County, but they'd learned something valuable: how to recognize someone who could distinguish between real and edited memories. Through the external cameras, I watched the town square return to normal. But in the distance, lights flickered in patterns that suggested something patient had learned to hunt more carefully. The mnemosyne was scattered, but fragments of it were already adapting, learning to survive in a world where at least one person remembered the difference between what happened and what felt better than what happened. 6 months later, I still wake up at exactly 2:17 a.m. every single night, my body locked into that moment when the cognitive disruptor anchored authentic human memory to the facility's quantum arrays and scattered the mnemonic parasites across conceptual dimensions I'm still trying to understand. The studio apartment I rent in Spokane feels deliberately sparse, furnished with items that carry no emotional weight because I've learned to be suspicious of any memory that feels too satisfying, too complete, too much like what I would have wanted to experience rather than what actually happened. My black hoodie hangs in the closet next to 5 identical replacements, because some habits anchor identity when everything else becomes negotiable. The steel-toe work boots sit by the door, polished but unused since I haven't worked anywhere that required them, or any job at all, since the night I learned that human memory is just electrical patterns, and those patterns can be rewritten by things that understand the code better than we ever will. The official story, buried on page 14 of the Seattle Times, described a catastrophic data breach at a classified federal memory verification facility that resulted in the permanent closure of cognitive security operations due to equipment failure and potential psychological contamination. Harrow County was administratively dissolved within 6 weeks, its population relocated across the Pacific Northwest, with new medical records showing treatment for post-traumatic memory dissociation syndrome, a condition that apparently affects people whose cognitive patterns have been compromised by experimental technology exposure. The facility was demolished with termite charges, and the entire valley redesignated as a federal psychological research area, where civilian access is permanently restricted for ongoing mental health safety concerns. The problem isn't that I can't trust my memories. The problem is that I can trust them too well, like someone had taken apart my autobiographical storage and put it back together with all the connections reinforced against interference. I remember everything with perfect clarity, not just my own experiences, but fragments of every witness statement, trauma testimony, and emergency recall I'd ever processed through the facility's systems. When I fired that disruptor and anchored authentic memory to the quantum arrays, I absorbed thousands of raw, unfiltered human experiences. I carry the accumulated authentic memories of everyone who'd ever trusted our facility to preserve their most difficult moments. Mrs. Patterson's grief over losing her husband, Deputy Chen's first day on the force, Sheriff Martinez's memories of accident scenes. These borrowed memories don't fade. They remain as sharp as the day I absorbed them, a walking archive of human authenticity. It's made me valuable in ways I never expected. I've become a living sensor for memory authenticity, able to distinguish between real experiences and edited versions with the precision of perfect pitch. A detective in Portland called last month about witness testimonies that were too consistent, too neat. I met with each witness separately, and within minutes I could tell which memories were authentic and which had been polished. Real memories have rough edges, contradictory details, emotional inconsistencies that make them feel lived, in rather than constructed. The mnemonic parasites hadn't died when I fired that disruptor. They'd learned. They'd learned to be subtle, to edit memories in small doses through the vast networks of social media platforms, digital photo albums, and automated memory assistance apps that now permeate every aspect of modern life. Instead of dramatic rewrites like Harrow County, they make tiny adjustments, smoothing over arguments, softening disappointments, making failures feel less personal. Most people never notice because the changes feel like natural memory drift. but I can spot edited memories like perfect pitch for psychological authenticity. Agent Reeves calls once a month, but now his voice is different, less guarded, more direct. He's seen my reports, the patterns I've been tracking, the anomalies I've been documenting. He doesn't offer me a job anymore. He offers me resources, encrypted channels, satellite feeds, access to obscure federal databases that track cognitive consistency fluctuations in remote populations. We're working together now, not as agent and subject, but as two people who understand that some threats can only be fought by embracing the very chaos they exploit. I keep a notebook by my bed and write down what I remember about each previous day before I go to sleep. Nothing poetic, just facts. In the morning, I reread the entry before checking news or going outside. So far, the notebook and my recall match perfectly, but every so often, something external doesn't. Last month, I wrote down seeing a minor car accident downtown. The next morning, local news carried a story about a pedestrian fatality at that same intersection. According to every system, the death happened. According to my memory, it didn't. Mnemosiny doesn't just rewrite memories in people's heads. Sometimes it runs A/B tests, trying different versions of reality until it decides which one it prefers. My apartment walls are covered in maps, timelines, and cryptic notes tracking localized memory discrepancies. A small town in Kansas reports collective amnesia affecting 3 days of memories. A retirement community in Arizona where residents claim their deceased relatives are still alive. A college campus in New England where students insist they've always attended a different university. These aren't dramatic, town-consuming events. They're insidious, creeping incursions where the parasites feed patiently, rewriting reality one personal memory at a time. I've started writing about it as fiction. Horror stories that smell too much like memory, posted on platforms where people click for entertainment and then forget. Except some don't forget. Some recognize the texture of their own edited experiences in the narratives. I bury warnings in the stories. If your worst memories feel manageable, examine them closely. If your failures don't hurt anymore, they might not be yours. If your past feels like it makes perfect sense, be suspicious. My phone buzzes with a news alert. Social media platform reports advanced memory integration features. The article describes AI-assisted photo organization that helps users remember their experiences more clearly by filling in missing details and enhancing emotional context. I recognize the careful language that suggests something more significant than photo editing software. The parasites are evolving, learning to hunt through platforms where billions of people voluntarily upload their memories as digital artifacts, where we've already made our experiences negotiable. Last week I received an encrypted message from an anonymous source. We are listening. We remember the original. We are fighting back. It was a snippet of authentic childhood memory, perfectly preserved, belonging to a victim of a mnemonic parasite attack in Idaho. Someone out there is remembering the truth, and they're reaching out. Sometimes, late at night when the Spokane rain hits my windows, I wonder if I made the right choice. The parasites had offered me edited memories where I saved my father instead of failing him. Those false memories are still there, incomplete ghosts of lives I never lived, but they feel clean, frictionless, painless. The real memory of watching him fall still cuts like broken glass. But that's the trap. That's always been the trap. Real memories have consequences attached to them. Regrets, scars, habits formed around avoiding specific mistakes. The edited ones just loop back into themselves like pleasant lies. I chose to remember failure because failure is proof you were there when something real happened. I open a new document and start typing. Emergency alert. Do not trust your memories creepypasta. Not because it will save everyone, but because someone might read it when their past starts feeling too perfect and remember that authentic memory, even painful memory, is worth protecting. They'll follow the warning buried in the story. And for one more night, In one more small town, people will choose to remember what actually happened instead of what would have been easier to experience. The mnemonic parasites are patient, and they're learning that the most effective way to edit human memory isn't to replace it with obvious fiction, but to improve it just enough that people stop wanting to remember what was real. But some of us remember the weight of authentic experience, and we're not going quietly into that edited night.